Hello, welcome to the second episode of my podcast. I've decided to change the name of the podcast from the odd and generic name Disaster's Thoughts, which I realized is a bit difficult to say, to a new one. From now on, this is Say What? Brought to you by yours truly. Again, if you don't know me, my name is Dawood or Wood, a nobody that is so inarticulate that after you listen to me, you might go, say what? So actually there is no appealing or redeemable quality at all for you guys to hear me talk. So if you stick around, I have nothing else to offer but to say thank you so much. Feel free to let me know in the comment or reach out to me personally what you think, what you like about it, what else can I improve, or what are some of the topics that you want to hear me talk about. All right, so now that we get that out of the way, let's get right into this episode, which I named On Interpretation. Another generic name, right? But I mean, it's right to the point. So, a few weeks ago, my work routine changed a bit because the team from Singapore flew in to do UT, which is quite a common thing if you work in the UX UI field. If you don't know what UT is, it stands for usability testing. So basically, when you design a new feature of the app, or you have some new designs that you don't know if they're gonna work or not, you would create the prototype for that design and test it out on real users to see how they will respond to it and to gather some new insight or useful insights about these designs. But I won't go into details about this specific testing or study that we did because of confidentiality, of course. But what I can say or talk about it is that I learned a lot from this UT because mostly for someone like me who's working as a localization specialist or someone who translate the app content from one language to another, the involvement of my role to the UT is not often or not extensive. Mostly it will involve someone who works as a product manager or a product designer or a content designer. Most of the time that I get involved in UT, I'll get asked to only localize the prototype they're testing. Sometimes they'll ask me to join the UT as an observer, sometimes on Zoom, or sometimes in person. But this time, I got to get involved more. Not only localizing the prototype, but I also acted as an interpreter for the interview session as well as help moderating some of them. It sounds like not much, right? But these are the things that they are way out of my comfort zone. Let's imagine that like in your regular days, you mostly just work alone on your laptop. You might be jumping on calls and meetings from time to time, collaborating with other people on projects from time to time, having to deal with stakeholders from time to time. But all of that happens mainly in front of a computer screen. But these things that I did for this specific UT, I was required to be there in the flesh, having to actively move around, act and react to certain things at that very moment. It was all new for me, not to mention how challenging and difficult life interpretation already is. The first thing that you have to understand is that while translation and interpretation might overlap, they are different beasts. They require different skills to conquer. Not that I can say that I fully conquered translation, right? But I'm mostly familiar with translation or working directly with text. Then with interpretation, having to listen to what the participants say in Thai and then try to capture it, transfer it, and reframe it out loud in English at that very moment, it requires a lot of energy, a lot of attention, a lot of focus from me. What's intriguing about doing interpretation, though, for me is the immediacy of it all. There is so much going on within seconds and split seconds. Sometimes you cannot think of the best English word at that very moment. So you need to know when to let go of your attempt to dig for the right word and just try however best you can to capture the essence of what was said. Sometimes you're so focused at how you're going to translate the things that the participant have just said so much that you lost attention to what they're saying next. Sometimes there are lots of filler words or lots of words that were being said while the participant was lost in their train of thoughts. And you need to be careful what to translate and what not to translate, right? Because it would just sound nonsensical in the target language if every other word from the source is translated exactly as they are. So what interpretation is to me changed from what I knew about it in terms of the definition to how it actually is while I'm doing it, which is to find and to master this balance of what to retain and what should be lost in translation. Even sometimes that the balance is off, you'll need to find a way back to that balance however you can. And all that we're talking about here is the interpretation of the content only, right? But what about emotions? How should we interpret with the right emotion? How much should we capture the emotion of the participants? Because if too much, are we doing voice acting instead of doing interpretation? I don't know, right? That is just the things that like hanging in the back of my mind, things that I'm pondering about as well. So sure, interpretation is simply listening to the messages in one language and spitting them out in another. But there are so many decisions and micro decisions that need to be made instantly. So many proposals, so many negotiations, and even rejections happening in my head while doing it. And that is something that I'm actually captivated by. Because I think interpretation forced my mind to go into this active mode that I'm ready for anything that can happen. It's almost like a fight or flight mode of survival. There's some sort of mental flexibility and fluidity in it that I find super captivating because with translation, right, I usually work so much on the text and I can get super OCD when it comes to editing and QCing those translations. So perhaps I could say that translation usually comes with some sort of rigidity and repetitiveness for me in terms of how I approach it, how I repeat and revise the same thing over and over again until I find it to be acceptable or near perfect. But with interpretation, you don't have that luxury. But in return, though, you get to enter this state of fluctuating fluidness that allows you to access whatever you have ready in the most active part of your memory, of your brain. Sometimes you'd be surprised at what you can come up with when you're really forced to come up with something so instantly. That captivating quality of interpretation also speaks to my experience with this whole UT as well. I never knew that I could ever do this, be it interpreting or moderating the session. But because I was there in that situation, right? Because the situation compelled me to do it, to act and react. So then I did it. I did it the best that I could. And I think what I did, though not nearly perfect nor professional, it wasn't bad at all. I think it was okay. It gets the job done, right? So I was surprised that I could do it. Surprised to learn of these capabilities within me that I didn't know. Maybe because I'd never gotten a chance to explore it before, or maybe because my insecurities prevented me from ever trying. The whole UT lasted for 3 days, and even though it was super energy draining for me, I find it to be quite refreshing and rewarding. I think it's nice to try to do something new or something different once in a while and learn that you can actually do it and perhaps being able to perfect it in the future. Not only that it's a huge to moderate ego boost, but I think you can always gain something useful from trying something different. Even though you may realize in the end that it's not for you, at least you've tried it, right? And you have the first-hand experience of it. And I think that's the best thing you can ask for, isn't it? To have the first-hand experience, however good or bad it might be. So the most amazing thing that I discovered is perhaps that I have these abilities to learn or do something new at all. So what about you? Have you been doing something new or something out of your comfort zone lately? And has it been rewarding for you? Feel free to share in the comment if you don't mind. For today, that's it for Say What. Thanks for listening, folks. Until next time.